What's up guys, back again with another video. So today we're going to take a look at external MIDI on the Commodore Amiga, and we're going to use my favorite Amiga, the Amiga 1200. So external MIDI for the Amiga, how is this even possible? Well, with an external MIDI synthesizer like a ROLAND MT32, we can interface this with an Amiga. These days you can pick up a ROLAND MT32 pretty cheap. Anywhere from between $50 to $100 is what you should be aiming for. I've had mine for years. In fact, you can watch a video circa 2012 of me using one on an X68000. Be warned though, the video is terrible. But did you know the Amiga supports the ROLAND MT32? And of course, being an Amiga fan, I had to investigate. Now, like the ATARI ST, MIDI on the Amiga is easily achievable. Unlike the ST, however, there are no built-in MIDI ports, so we will need to use an external MIDI interface instead. A MIDI interface is simply a device that connects to the serial port that controls the flow of data to and from the Amiga. Think of it like a modem. Generally speaking, they contain a MIDI in, MIDI out, and a MIDI through port. Now I have the A.M.A.S device, which is a combined sampler MIDI interface, but there are many Amiga MIDI interfaces out there, and you can even make your own if you are so inclined. What's cool about this device is we can finally interface an Amiga to the MT32. So what do we need to do to make this work on an Amiga? Well, the first thing you need is an Amiga computer, of course. Any will do that contain a working serial port. Of course, I would strongly recommend an accelerated Amiga, a 68020 or faster. Next, you will need a ROLAND MT32 or equivalent MIDI synth module, a MIDI interface, just like the A.M.A.S. Now you'll need some MIDI cables as well. One should be fine. Connect the MIDI cable to the MIDI out of the MIDI interface into the MIDI in of the ROLAND MT32. Now on the back of the ROLAND there are two left and right phono connectors. These need to go to your speakers. However, I would strongly recommend you pick up a cheap 4-track mixer, as you are going to be mixing MIDI sounds with poorer sound effects. And finally, on the MIDI interface, plug in the serial connector into the serial port into the back of the Amiga. And with that, everything's connected and ready to go. Let's check out some games. So doing some investigations, there are only 7 commercial titles that were released that contained external MIDI support. Sierra Online was responsible for all of them, and I think it's fair to say that Sierra games haven't aged well for a number of different reasons. Why Sierra, you ask? Well, the home computer market was spurred by Sierra's interest in multimedia support before CD-based games, and they even distributed the MT32 with a number of their games. Okay, so only 7 games, let's check out one at least. Space Quest on the Amiga with the MT32. After installing the game and running it, we are indeed getting audio. However, this is polar audio and not MIDI. Making a small change to switch from the Amiga sound.drv to the MT32.drv enables it. Have a listen. So with only 7 commercial releases, why do we even care about external MIDI support on the Amiga? What if I told you there was an open source shared library out there that allowed developers to easily incorporate MIDI into their own software and homebrew ports? And we're going to take a look at those right now. CAMD, short for Commodore Amiga MIDI Library, is a shared library that provides a general driver for MIDI. It's also open source. In its simplest form, the driver allows connection to any external MIDI interface via the serial port and can share MIDI data to and from that device, just like the MT32. Although it's just a driver for a serial device, this library is especially geared for MIDI only. And what things support CAMD? The Amiga port of SCUMMVM supports CAMD and sounds great on the MT32. Take a listen for yourself. Credit goes to Novacoder for this port for including CAMD MIDI into this release. Cheers, mate. So if you guys remember, in the last video I added Prisma Megamix music support to my port of HERETIC. Just like the Prisma Megamix support, including this was fairly trivial. It took only a couple of hours to get up and running. Most of the time was debugging. One thing I noticed was I had to use a separate thread in order for the music to continue to play through the serial port. Trying to utilize the main thread that the game was running on would cause it to lock up and have all sorts of issues. And this is Chocolate HERETIC with external MIDI support for the MT32 on my Commodore Amiga 1200. And finally, while this is not game related, I think it's important to mention that the Amiga has some brilliant software for making music. And an external MIDI keyboard, it is possible to use something like Music X, which is a very impressive music sequencer. This may be a topic for a future video, as producing music in the 90s is completely different to the way it is today. So in conclusion, it's a bit of a shame there was only 7 games that were officially supported on the Amiga. If you compare that to DOS, which had about 250 or so, it's a very meager listing of games. And as before with the Prisma video, I uploaded a new port of Chocolate HERETIC 1.01, which supports external MIDI. So for those people that have external MIDI devices, check it out and let me know. I was running mine on a ROLAND MT32, but I'd be very interested to hear how it sounds on other external MIDI devices. So thanks for watching. As always, leave a comment below if you like this video or if you have any questions about it. Don't forget to comment and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye for now.